Hey there, and welcome to this episode. This is a guest episode, and I am sharing someone very special to me with you today. So we are welcoming Sac-Nicte, Yescas, to our conversation. So I'm going to share just a little bit, and then I will open up the floor for anything that I forgot or that you want to add. So when I first moved to the United States, I moved here with my family in 2016, May 1st, 2016. And I've always loved policy and politics, but I had never been really involved, in large part because I lived in Germany the whole time and there's some rules. And I had become an activist, and I have an earlier podcast about this when there was the mass shooting in an elementary school in Connecticut is when I started my activism. But when I came in, I really wanted to get involved and I didn't know how, and I was scared. I was really, really, really scared. So I reached out to the local party, and I had the incredible joy of being welcomed into literal feet on the ground, phone in hand, packet in arm, knocking on doors by Sac-Nicte. She helped me feel brave and empowered and, of all things, safe. And that was a really important time in my life. I was living in downtown Denver. I was walking around downtown Denver. I had some of the most incredible experiences of people telling me about the history of where I was. And I was in Five Points, which is a historical Black neighborhood in Swansea. And they were telling us the experiences of the immigrant community. I was using my horrible Spanish. It was fantastic. But I also just learned to trust myself, that I could have really important conversations. And for those of you who've listened to the Crucial Conversations episode about how to have important conversations, I actually started really putting that into place because of the work that I did that year in 2016. Then a few years, or what was it? I don't know, like a year ago, a year and a half ago, you reached out to me and said, hey, I want to go and really switch it up. I've been in politics for so long. I've done all this other work, but I'd also worked in tech and I want to explore something else. And you gave me the chance to support you, which I don't know if you remember, but I squealed in joy. I was so excited. Our mutual friend connected us again and I got all excited. So we've been working together for, about a year in total, I think.
Yep.
Is there anything there about you as a human that you want to add or correct, share?
No, that was very, very accurate. Thank you, Nicole, for inviting me to do this podcast. My first one ever. So I'm really excited.
First of many. Oh my gosh. First of many. I'm so excited. I'm your first podcast. I did not know that. So very cool. All right, keep going. Sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah, no, I think the way you described the way, how we met is pretty much on point. And I love working with people when it comes to activism and political campaigns. And when you find volunteers like you, it's like a treasure, right? So it's like, okay, this person is going to really do the work and understands the importance of it. So yeah, it was a great combination, right? And a great working relationship there when we met. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's very accurate, like I said. But I guess I can build from there. I am a person, I'm a woman, that considers herself a community organizer overall, and first and foremost, at the core, I think I'll always be a community organizer. Every job, every experience I've had professionally, that's my mindset, and it's always worked. I am passionate about social justice and building community and creating opportunity, right? In every job, where that I had, I think the question is always, how can I help, make this world better? Not to be corny, but that's really what drives me. And when I contacted you, after doing, because I've done some work in nonprofit organizations, activism, international institutions, electoral politics, and more recently, tech, which
Mm-hmm.
is something that I'm also really interested in. And I see mainly as a tool, right, to to improve inclusivity, um, and equality, right, in many
Mm-hmm.
ways. And obviously, you have to be careful in the way you use technology and the tools that we have available to us. But I think that we should definitely not think of it as something foreign, right? Especially for someone like me, right, that has worked in fields, right, and with
Yes.
people and communities in real life. Because there's a whole world there, out in technology, in tech, and more specifically, right, blockchain, which is something that I
Yeah.
I recently got involved in. Starting, when was it? Like last year. Last year,
Yeah.
basically what I was trying to do is to transition into tech, and more of like a policy role within a tech company, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Because you have organizing skills. You speak a couple of languages. You are a trained lawyer, right? You've done international work, so you know lots of policy. You worked for some big name American politicians. And so when we first started working together, it was about tech and the policy around tech and the community organizing around tech. Is that right? I totally forgot about this.
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, social impact, right? Like that,
That's
it had
right.
to be
Yeah.
like, when I decided to make this transition, I was like, it has to have something related to social change and social impact, right? Because
That's right. I
um
remember that. Yeah. I remember. And Jen Beeson, who was on the podcast, she works in corporate social responsibility. And we talked about that, but it wasn't lighting you up. And then, do you remember when you came and you were so lit up?
yeah, going back to what you were just saying, that's pretty much how it went down right back then last year. um yeah, I initially wanted to transition into tech. I have worked in tech a little bit, but I wanted to transition fully. I do want to have this experience, right? Because, like I said, I see the tech as a tool
Yeah.
to create opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Equality, inclusivity. So when I first reached out to you, I remember I was looking into jobs in social impact within big tech companies, right?
Right.
But then around that time, I happened to go to a conference about blockchain, and that really changed everything for me, right? Because what what it was is they brought together social justice activists, artists, and people in blockchain, and that was for me something that sort of like it clicked for me, right? It's like, okay, there's something here. This is very fascinating. I love learning too, and I love learning new things. So this was just like, whoa, this is really cool. And then I definitely I suddenly was just like, you know what? I think I want to focus on this rather than the traditional,
Hmm.
you know, internet that we know, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and you had like people interested in interviewing you for active positions. You were like moving and shaking because you have a great network. And I remember I was like, okay, she's in this. Like we're looking at, I don't know, 8 to 9 weeks, and she'll be in rounds of interviews and negotiating. But you weren't lit up. It was interesting. And one of the things that I just loved about that first time I think we were texting and then we got on a phone call, was how focused you were on tech as a lever to make the world better. And then you get a glance over this. So I'm going to really nail it down for our audience so that they can identify when they're feeling their passion. The next time we talked, you went to this conference. You're like, yeah, I don't know. I think you got a ticket from somebody. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Well, it was from my alma mater, right?
That's right.
Yeah, because as you were saying earlier, my background is more in policy, politics, and
That's
law,
right.
and my alma mater as an alumni group, very active here in New York and in general, right, in the U.S.
Yeah.
But they invited us to a conversation with Frank McCourt, who
Yes.
was launching Unfinished Life, right, which is this project that I was mentioning, right, like bringing together people from different walks of life to build a new era, right, in
Yes.
technology. So
Yeah. And you came out of that conference and you were fire and flame. You were so lit up. You were so like, Nicole, do you know about this? I was like, I know enough for a 3-minute YouTube video. And you just found what you saw incredible opportunity in that needs your skills that you knew people in. I mean, it was, y'all, listeners, listen, lit up, ready to take the risks. You could have gone the easy route. You really could have. It would not have been a thing, but you saw what you were passionate about and you just started moving towards it one step at a time with that passion and with that direction. Also, while you were going through really big life stuff, like us all, it was the pandemic, lockdowns, you're in New York City, the whole 9 yards. But yeah, like, dear listener, when you feel that passion and that excitement, follow it. I think this is one of the bravest gifts that you could give to us is your passion and your thrill, just like Sac-Nicte is sharing with us right now, right?
yeah, I
Mm,
mean, I know that it's not easy, right, and this is not something that's possible for many people, but for those few who have a passion, have found their passion and their purpose, I encourage you to follow that, because
yeah.
I guess that to me personally, it's what drives me. And it has helped, like I said, in every job I've had, asking that question, how can I help make a change, right? And that's just very important for me. But going back to your points, right, about that time when I was like, hey, Nicole, you know, a blockchain and, and DAOs and all these things, these new things. And yeah, no, basically what I did is after that conference, I enrolled in an online course about blockchain because I wanted to understand the technology. I'm not an engineer, that's not my strength, but I wanted to understand how it worked, and I have a better understanding now and how it can be used, right? And it's not just crypto. Because every time I talk to people about blockchain, it's like, oh, you're in crypto. It's like, I'm not in crypto. I mean, there's other things that exist
Yes.
on the blockchain.
Yes.
Crypto is a big thing, obviously, of course. But anyway, so yeah, I started to learn more about it. I started to meet people in this space, which is actually a really exciting space, by the way, because it's relatively new. So most people are very accessible, right? If you reach out to them, most
Mm-hmm.
likely they'll say yes and meet with you and talk about their experience and try to engage you, right? Which I think is really wonderful. But yeah, I started to meet people, and one of the things that you and I were working on around that time was, like interest interviews and networking, the importance of those two elements, right? As you're
Yes.
transitioning or starting a career, uh, at any point, really, right, in
Yeah.
time. But uh, yeah, so I think we created a plan, right? And something about
Mm-hmm.
coaching, right, that I wanted to say is that um, most of the people I've met, within your group of clients, when we meet for groups,
Yeah. Yeah.
let me
For the
go
group
back. So
sessions.
yeah,
Yeah.
when we have the group sessions, I see women that are very experienced, right? And most
Yeah.
of us have had long careers. Most of them in tech, but also some in teaching, and me in public service and politics. So it's not like we don't know that these things exist, right? But you do forget about it, as in it, and it's. I found that this is very important in any
Yeah.
sector. Me as an organizer, right? Like I started working as an organizer directly with people like you,
Yes.
volunteers, and talking to strangers, and I still do that, right? But I've had other positions, right? Managing
Yes.
teams and building projects from scratch, right? And leading it. So
Exactly.
but every time I've this is something that I do intentionally. Is like I try to go back to that, to talk to the organizers, to talk to the people that are in the front lines, and to try to do it, even if it's just at the beginning, a few days. Try to be out there, because we do forget. You do forget,
Yeah.
and it's so important, right? And it's the same
Yeah.
here, right, with networking, right? Like, obviously, I knew about
Yes.
networking. I know it's important, but I hadn't done it intentionally for such a long time, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, when we started working, we created this plan, right? And I remember one day when you asked me, it's like, okay, so what's your goal? I was like, okay, I'm gonna contact 10 people uh,
That's
this week,
right.
right? So I said, I'm gonna contact 10 people this week, and these are random people, all right? These are not people that I know, they're not in my network. I just, I research them. I research the companies that I find most interesting for me, at the moment in blockchain. So yeah, I reached out to 10 people, and from there I got 4 calls, 4 meetings, yeah, Zoom or over the phone, and 3 references. And this is from people that didn't know me, right? And I was, my mind was blown, right? Because I don't think I've
Yeah.
had that much success before, when it comes to networking. And and I was surprised. And again, I mean, there's a lot of elements to this,
Yeah.
but just being, taking the time to do it and not being afraid to do it, to reach out to people like
Mm-hmm.
complete strangers, right? People you don't know, because that's basically what I
Yeah.
did. I went on and I was like, okay, I messaged them, they replied,
On
and
LinkedIn, right?
on
Was it
LinkedIn,
on
yeah,
LinkedIn? Yep.
they were
Okay.
on LinkedIn, and then there were a couple that I messaged on Discord, which is
Yes, that's
yeah,
right. Discord. I forgot about that part too.
yeah.
Wow, we have done so much amazing stuff together. I'm like, oh, I forgot that. Oh, I forgot that. Yeah, because one of the things that I remember us having a lot of conversation around before we made this really concrete momentum plan was about who are you now, not who you've been, and what's your story now? What kind of difference do you want to make now? And you crafted your storyline specifically around, hey, here's how I can help. Here's all the skills I have, and here's how I can help. And then you were so intentional about how you wanted to feel and when you were going to push yourself and when you were going to be kind to yourself, when you were traveling, when you were at home. And that is how you crafted this brand throughout your entire career, because you're quite senior. I'm not sure if we've made that clear, but you are quite senior. You've really worked in a lot of different places, lived in a lot of different places, had very high level roles. And then you're doing this big switch. So you had this amazing reputation. Your LinkedIn was on point. You did so much work for the shift. And then with the feeling and with your story, you reached out to people and they could just sense it. They could just feel it. Like, this is somebody who actually is, like you said earlier, how can I help make a change? And the course and all these things that you put into yourself, and allowing yourself, if I can just point something out, allowing yourself to ask for things was a huge growth, because you had been asking for various political candidates and bosses and organizations, and then you're like, oh, I'm asking for me.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think that was a big breakthrough for me, because, like you said, I have no problem asking strangers for things, when it comes to a cause, to
Yeah.
vote for a candidate, or to join, or sign a petition, right? Like, these things are easy to me. But when it
Yeah.
came to myself, I realized, I was like, whoa, I've never done that. And it was
Yeah.
hard, right? Like, I mean, it wasn't like, okay, let's just go ahead and do it. No, I was like, okay, it's a little bit embarrassing, I don't know what the answer is going to be, but I have to do it. And I think uh, that's that's where our work helped, right? Because
Yeah.
I had to feel comfortable being confident,
Yes.
being confident in my work, in my experience,
Yes.
owning it. And
Yes.
that's something that it's hard, right? Well, at least for me.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that, I think that was a big step, a big step for me. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And I there was also this breakthrough moment where you said, "Hey, Nicole, cuz I know what I know, right? I built my career in Europe, and there's not a big Latinx community in Europe, right?" And you came in and you're like, "So here's the deal. This is how many women who are identified by others or are identifying themselves as part of the Latinx community, this is how many work in tech." And it's a tiny, tiny percentage, right? This is how many you see in leadership positions. And we had just amazing conversation around what that meant for you and for the type of ceilings, windows, doors, all the things that you can crash through and really make an enormous change as well. And when all of that came together, it just, yeah. All of a sudden, we're on a call. I think we missed a week or two. I think I was sick probably, and we missed a week or two. And then we get back on the call, and you're like, "So I joined a hackathon. I'm in this program to make a DAO." And I'm like, "How do you spell that? What's a DAO?" Just took off, right? And of course, there's struggles. Of course, there's concerns, but just how you crafted something from literally nothing. Nothing was just astounding, really. How about you tell folks like what is a DAO? So first of all, it's spelled DAO, correct?
yes.
There we go.
Um, yeah. Some people might have heard about this, but it's basically, it stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, and in a nutshell, it's a collectively owned organization that lives on the blockchain, and it's decentralized, meaning that there's no CEOs or CFOs. Although there are some DAOs that do have these titles, but in essence, and the principle is that it's decentralized, and in contrast with the corporation as we know it,
Yeah.
you know, every member has a say, right? In the corporation, you have your executives, your board members making the decisions, and the workers usually don't. I know there's some models. I think Germany has a good one, right? With the workers are part of the
Yeah.
board members, but
Yeah, but it's like 2 out of, 12, I
hmm,
think, right?
right, right.
That the model that actually helped me understand this, come with me on this journey, because it took me a while to understand what we were talking about. I was watching YouTube videos. I was like reading the articles that you sent out because this was all new for me. I didn't know what this was. And what helped me was remembering that in the place I lived in Germany, it's wine country.
Mm-hmm.
And there are all of these micro vineyards, and they all come together and they make a wine. And that wine is provided and is served to the community at very low costs. When I say very low
Mm-hmm.
cost, it's like $3 for a lovely bottle of white wine, right?
Right.
And when something happens, there's a weather issue, or there's, moving from the cork bottles to the screw on bottles, which actually are better for the wine, white wine. They come together and they discuss and they have dialogues over a period of time, whatever that may be, a day, an hour, a month, whatever. And then in a unified way, they make a decision, not consensus based, but in a unified way. And therefore you can still get your wine for $3 or $4 a bottle because these micro farmers, micro vineyards are working together. And when I reflected on that, I was like, oh, I get this. But we're doing something revolutionary, and we're taking that back into the financial system, back into the various communities that our financial system have excluded. So
Right. I mean, what you described, it sounds a lot like, it sounds a lot like the way a DAO works, right? Making a decision
yes,
collectively, and I think that's what drew me to that, right? There's all different kinds of DAOs, but obviously the one of the important things is that these members of the community have a shared mission, right? So it's a shared mission.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, it's decentralized, and that's one of the yeah, I mean, it's one of the features that are very important here. Like decision making comes from the community. Governance, right? It's also something that is
Yes.
it's a big topic right now in the DAO community.
Yeah.
This is basically where you're going to lay out like how you vote and who in no this this is where you're going to lay out you know your voting system and the proposals, because that's something else, right? That's
Yeah.
another element, right, where the members of the DAO or the community, anyone can come and submit a proposal, but nothing happens without the community voting right together.
Yes.
And like I said, there's different types of DAOs, but what we're trying to do with ours is to bring together a community of investors and users that raise capital to help underrepresented communities that want to start a business in cannabis, right? And these are communities that have historically lacked access to capital in the traditional financial system, right? For many reasons, and that's a whole another podcast. But but
Well, let's just touch on it for just a second, for especially for the global audience. So about 30% of the people who listen to this podcast, hey y'all, are all over the world. So historically in the United States, and you correct any of the facts that I get wrong, please. Okay. Historically in the United States, white people, brown people, black people, all the people have utilized cannabis, pot, marijuana, whatever you want to call it, at the same rates per population. However, white people like me have not been going to jail for it, whereas black and brown people certainly have been at incredibly high numbers. It was something called the war on drugs. As a result of that, many people were then locked out of access to capital, money, loans, etc., to start their own businesses. And they were also locked out from the job market. So it's not a fantastic setup. It's almost like people were, working through a system. Anywho, then when states like Colorado, where I live, and a variety of others decided to legalize marijuana on the state level, the only people who could get in were people who had their own money. It's something like 99 point something percent were people who were white. So we have this situation in the United States for our global audience where black and brown people have been locked up for years, closed out of the system for many different reasons, one of them being that, who cannot create businesses in a key fast growth market and industry in the United States, but white people can. They can get the capital, they can get the access, they have the generational wealth, or we have the generational wealth, etc. So that's why having this, what's it called? Diversified? No.
Decentralized for the DAO?
The community-based, decentralized system to help people start their own businesses in an area like cannabis is community building. It's system changing. It's generational changing. Like, this brings all of the things that we started off with, what make you so special, brings it all together, and it answers the question, how can I help make a change?
Right. I mean, that's exactly what happened, right? I think, yeah, when we decided to start this project, that was the inspiration, right? Again, like I said, like for me, it's always about like, how can I help make a change, or create opportunity, create equality, or help create equality. And this was an issue that resonated, a lot. And, the whole situation with people of color, right, being incarcerated at high rates for minor marijuana offenses sometimes,
Yes.
and the injustice, right, that right now states are starting to legalize marijuana or cannabis, and they're now benefiting from a business that they know really well, right? They have the experience
Yes.
and they know the
Yes.
market. So
Yes.
this was just something like it was very interesting for me and my partner, Christos Sicilianis. He's in
Mm-hmm.
Greece, and so we had other people, when we joined the hackathon. That's how it started, right? And we had other people on the team that were very they contributed, to the project itself, but right now they're acting more as advisors, and we still continue, they continue to advise, and we
Fantastic.
consult with them. But yeah, I mean, we all had this in common, right? Like we all had a social justice background. Christos himself, he's a software engineer. He's our tech guru. Yeah,
Fantastic.
we always need that, of course. But he does have a social, he's been very involved in Greece. He's done, work around immigrants' rights.
Mm-hmm.
And he co-founded a cooperative, agricultural cooperative, and worked in the cannabis industry, but mainly like farming, I believe, if I'm correct. Yeah, I mean, but the point is really we're doing something that we're passionate about and that we believe in. And again, like I said, like sometimes when I mention that I'm doing a blockchain project, people are like, "Oh, you're in crypto. You want to be a billionaire," and it's like it's really that's not our drive. I think our drive is
Right.
to is economic justice, right, in a way. So yeah, I mean that's basically how I ended up with this project. This DAO. We've been working on this since last April.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We've been looking at different models and tools and ways in which we can raise capital. All of this within decentralized finance. And there is something that we want to include that is actually becoming a little more known and popular, I guess. It's the tokenization of real life assets, right? So we're
Mm-hmm.
going to implement that in our project. And I mean, I don't want to give out too much, but it's
No,
really
no, no.
exciting and it's a really new concept. And more real estate companies are starting to use it.
Mm-hmm.
Some real estate companies are starting to use it here in the US and abroad. And yeah, well, overall, this project, like I said, we're going to launch in the US, but it's going to be tailored to people globally. But yeah, so that's
That is exciting. That is very, very exciting. Oh my goodness. So, yeah, we're going to have links in the show notes so that you can go even further. You've just been so generous with your story and how you got there and what helped you. I'm curious about your brave role models. Who was generous and inspirational for you?
yeah, that's a hard one because I do admire, and I mean, the women in my family, of course, right? But my friends, the people I know, people I've worked with, I think I always have respect for them, and I always learn something from them too, right? So, but I mean, just to get into a micro level, yeah, my mom and the women in my family, right? My parents, rather, both of them, they had a really strong work ethic. My mom was very hardworking and resilient, and my dad was always, encouraging us to go the extra mile, right, and to not be afraid to go out and do what you like, and you're passionate about. He always talked about passion too.
My impression of the stories over the years is that while they encouraged you to go out and to go the extra mile, you have always had a nest. They created the both. That as a mom, I want to create for my children. That's why it stood out for me. It's like, go into the world, experience, go the mile, do the things, move to the countries, whatever. And you are always at home here. And I think that that's one of the reasons that you have been such a community driver. So I'm really honored that you would share their memories with us.
No, thank you.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Ah, so much inspiration. All right, just the last
Can
question.
I say something else to that though? Sorry
Oh,
to my
please.
parents. So yeah, my dad, he will always tell me be brave, and that's something I remember is interesting because he was like, but I think it's in the Bible, I believe, and he always shows that for me. He would say, "Esfuérzate y sé valiente," so make an effort and be brave, right? So that was something that he always had for me, and that it made me think a lot. So yeah, I mean, both my parents, my sisters too. I mean, they raised very strong women and very resilient as well. And I could give you examples of each of them. But yeah, more recently, I think I've met a few people, and these are women, and two of them actually were part of our team in the hackathon. These were women from Afghanistan. They're both front end engineers, and when they joined, they were in Afghanistan, and unfortunately they had to drop because they were facing a lot of struggles at home, right? And one of them, well, was, they had a lot of problems with internet and connectivity. But I think, and they never mentioned this, but I think we know, given the situation in Afghanistan, how hard it was for them, to even, like join the hackathon, right? And have the freedom to use their skills and their knowledge.
Yeah.
So I think about them a lot, and I'm like, okay, hopefully, once we launch, hopefully they're able to come back, right?
Right.
And then yeah, I mean, there's women, this all, I'm lucky to have met a lot of women. They're they're very strong, they're brave. And then there's one more. This one is, we worked in the last campaign, the last political campaign I worked on. She was the campaign manager, the co-campaign manager, and she's a woman of color, right? And we both worked in the headquarters.
Hmm.
Her name is Sasha Ahuya. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but yeah, she was the co-campaign manager this campaign, and we both worked in the headquarters. And she was the only woman of color, aside from me, working, if I remember well, in the headquarters at the time. And I
Yeah.
had an office right in a little corner, and I was always busy because I was doing logistics and operations, and I'm always busy when I'm on a campaign. But every time they had like lunch, or they got together to watch the debate, with our candidate participating in it, she would come to my office and be like, "Hey, you should join us. You should come." And I'll be like, "Yeah, yeah, give me a second." Like, and in my mind, I'm like, "There's no, like, I can't right now. Like, there's so much work to do." But she insisted every single time, and there were many times, and I realized, it's like how important that is, and like I realized what she was
Yeah.
doing at the time. Obviously, I knew, but because I was so stressed with work, I didn't like really appreciate it. And not appreciate, I appreciate it. It's more like, okay, like the significance and the magnitude of what she was doing. Because when I entered those rooms, that room in particular, right? Yeah, it was all, she was the only woman of color, and then it was me, right? She invited me to join the table, right? To join the
Yes.
group, and it was like, that was very important. I mean, that is very important. We all know this, right? For women, and especially
Yeah.
women of color. And I
Yes.
learned that from her, even though obviously I know that we have to work towards this and be be allies, and be helpful to our sisters. But seeing it so close had a big impact, and I hope I'm able to do that one day. I hope I'm doing it already, but I really want to make sure that I do it now that I had that experience with Sasha. And she's a wonderful
Well,
manager too, so.
and I want to confirm for you. So all of your examples were women who are called women of color in today's English vernacular, right? And that is so important that we elevate voices that sound different, people who look different, people who love different, right? Than this idea that we've artificially chosen as norm. And what she was doing is called the shine and amplify method. I have a podcast episode all about it. If you're like, what? Why is that important? How do you do that? I had someone do that for me and then teach me how to do it in that project, but also how to do it overall. And once one is aware of the magnitude, like you said, you chose the absolute correct word. It's magnitude. We shine the lights onto each other and we amplify the presence. We amplify the voices and the skills. And it's very simple, it's very brave, and it fundamentally changes the trajectory of many people's lives. So, per usual, my friend, community building you are. Thank you so much. And we'll have links in the show notes for sure. Is there anything that you wanted to share that we missed talking about your journey, your background, inspiration you wanted to leave, how coaching helped you, like just anything? Because I could keep you on here for another hour. Let's be clear.
Just in general, and just taking from what you said, since we're talking about bravery and careers, particularly for women of color, right, who are trying to start a project or trying to make a career change or enter a new industry, right? Like in my case, tech and like blockchain, and more specifically, there are times where you're gonna doubt yourself, because I have, of course, but just keep going, really, because sometimes there's no one else doing what you're trying to do. And talking about blockchain, in the blockchain space, we need more diversity, right? There was a survey recently by actually it was an article in CoinDesk, and they highlighted how 23% of Black Americans and 17% Hispanic Americans own crypto, in comparison to 11% of white people, right? And there
Wow.
are other surveys.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
but in spite of that, the industry is still dominated by white males, right? So there's
Yeah.
very few people like me trying to start a project on blockchain, and we need more. And
Yeah.
please, after this, if you have time, or at some point, go and Google blockchain and social justice, and you will see all the great things that are happening in the space.
What you just said is really, really important. You are one of the very few women of color who is boldly creating a new path that we will all benefit from. And I want to applaud you. And I also want to encourage all of the listeners not to write off blockchain and not to write off crypto and not to write off DAOs, but really take a moment and go learn about it. Even if it's 7 minutes a month for the next 12 months, I promise you, our current understanding of these technologies and who is smart enough to do them is exactly like what the internet was when all of us were in high school or younger. This is a massive, massive, massive growth area. And we need this time. We need women like us, women from every community, non binary people, transgender people, people in every community and faith to be leaders so that we don't replicate the broken systems in yet another technology. Cannot stress it enough. So
Absolutely.
thank you for bringing that here very, very much.
No, thank you. But yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention, since we are here talking about careers, right, and being brave, yeah, I mean, definitely don't be afraid to reach out to people and ask, for whatever it is that you need, right, in terms of like, professionally, right, or even personally, I guess. But something that we always say in community organizing is, you don't get what you don't ask for, right?
Yes.
And what's the worst thing that can happen? That they say no, and then what? Just move on with life. That was just whatever. It was a no, and we get a lot of no's, as you know, knocking doors. and
Absolutely.
and life goes on, right? And the world keeps moving, and it's okay. And I think even in that case,
Yeah.
you gain that experience, right? So yeah, go out there and network. I know it can be daunting. I know, you can be nervous and a little bit afraid. That's okay. Feel what you had to feel, but then go and do it. And just be comfortable. Like I said at the beginning, be comfortable being confident. I think,
Yeah.
at least in my case, I had to work on it. But, um, we're all in different places, right, in our lives. But yeah, I think just owning it is very important.
And I think it's different for all of us, but it's the same for all of us. I have yet to have a client. I mean, I've had clients in the C-level. Right now I'm working with a woman who just turned 27 years old, and confidence is a skill for us all. And I believe that bravery is what allows us to build the confidence. First, the clarity. Yeah.
Yep. Agreed.
So we will link to you on LinkedIn. Is that the best place, or is there somewhere else?
LinkedIn, Discord. Yes, feel free to reach out anytime.
Okay, fantastic. So we'll have links to all of that in the show notes. Fantastic. Hey, you are a treasure. Thank you. Thank you for helping me build my brave, however many years ago that was now. Thank you for being there in the heartbreak afterwards. Thank you for remaining in contact and giving me so many skills, and then entrusting me to be your coach as you figure out another way to help to make change. I'm really proud that I know you and that we have this amazing relationship. So thanks.
Thank you. Likewise. I'm going to cry.
Yeah, I am crying. So catch up. All right, everybody. Until next week, brave it up. Bye. Hey, before you go, if you find the brave concepts I share in this podcast useful and you want personal, in-depth support to reach your brave goals, I invite you to apply for my 6-month one-on-one Build Your Brave coaching package. I coach you and I teach you everything you need to know to get clear, get going, and become your brave you. Imagine you and me together for 6 months, building your bravery so that no matter your goal, no matter where you're starting, we celebrate your results. You will stress less, you will work less, and you will earn a lot more. Go to tricksteinbach.com and schedule your consultation. Till next week, brave it up.